Hello, everyone. Today I'm with Fariah from Kenya, and today she is sharing her water story. Thank you, and go take it away.
Thank you, Joy. As you said, my name is Fariah Abdi. Abdi is the short form for Abdurrahman, but then I go by Fariah Lalaikipian because that's my like clan name and my family name. So Lalaikipian is Samburu. I'm a leader. I'm a young Muslim woman leader here in Kenya, and I was born and raised in a pastoralist community. It's called Samburu. It's a minority community towards the north of Kenya. So they're both pastoralist and nomadic. So one thing I'd say is that I think I have a unique experience with water because coming from a community that's pastoralist and lives in an arid area, so arid, semi-arid areas of Kenya, water is like gold. I think out of everything else, water is the gold in our community because we don't have like where my community is, there's not like a permanent water body. So they highly survive using like the seasonal rivers or programs that come in from nonprofits or the government that they have create like boreholes and water areas. So for me, I'd say I'd look at it from two sides. Water has always been a vulnerability point for women, especially for women, because I'm very passionate about women and girls and their empowerment, has been always a point of vulnerability for women and girls because they're the ones who go look for water and they have to walk miles and miles and miles to get water, especially on times when the places are very dry and the seasonal rivers have dried up. So they've had to look for water from like walk miles and miles away before we had the opportunity to get like tap water next in the community. But on the positive side, I'd say just that aspect of going together to look for water. I think I've learned so much of my community and my traditions, just because no woman goes to fetch water alone. One of the things I've learned in my community is that they go in groups every single time. And the funniest thing is that I might have gone for water today, but if tomorrow I hear someone like another group is going for water, even if I have a lot of water in my house, I will just go. And that always fascinated me. I was like, what is happening with like, do these women don't have anything else to do? They're always going together to get water and they have water in the house. But one of the things I realized that is like their safe space. As they're going to get water, they're talking about their days and what their husbands did and what their children are doing and what they're like their animals and livestock. And they're catching up, but they're also building that strong relationships. And most of these strong relationships come from those trips to towards getting water. So for me, I'd say as much as it created a space of vulnerability for women, but then it also created an opportunity for them to build very strong relationships that the community is benefiting from now because it's through these women-led relationships that they're able to build the economic standards of their communities. Either it's through the system of table banking. Is that when they're going to get water, that's how they plan. Like tomorrow we're going to meet and we're going to contribute 1 shillings or 10 shillings of this amount of money. And we're going to do this. We're going to support this person or this other person to start a business. So I'd say my relationship with water has been, I'd say both sides, fortunate, unfortunate, but then I've also kind of seen the how water is used in my community. As I said, it's gold. So something else that I've seen is that and experience is that water is seen as a very sacred thing, not because it's not available, but it's also because it holds part of the culture for the community. Because every cultural ceremony I've attended as a Samburu is that there's always an element of water. So if you go to during the um circumcision for boys, they have to walk a long distance to go and fetch water. Just like it's a very like a little gourd of water to go and they would walk for kilometers and kilometers to go and fetch that water so that they can come mix it with milk, and then it can be used during the ceremony. And that was like very fascinating because I wondered what is special about water that people would walk. They would leave like in the morning and come back like maybe they'd leave like around 6 a.m. and come back like 6 p.m. to just go and fetch a small, like a very tiny, I'd say container of water. And so for me, that's something that I've seen, that there's this relationship with water that my community members have that I believe kind of connects them back to nature. It's that this is sacred. It's hard to access this for us, but we hold it in such a sacred way. And because it brings us back to connecting with nature and to connecting with our ancestors. Because even when we are during a marriage ceremony, there's usually a stool that has water and I think milk. And when the husband and the wife are being they shave a side of their head, and that's those their hair, like for the man and the woman, is mixed on that stool that has water. So there's a lot of water is used in very sacred ways in my community, and it's kind of a way of connection to get for people to the land, and of course also to the ancestors. So I'd say, yeah, it's there's that sacredness that water has in our community.
Thank you so much for sharing. I think it's so powerful to hear about how water is a community tool, how it helps bring people together. Um, and I know that traditionally in a lot of these places, women are the ones carrying the water. Like we've heard stories about how some people have injuries based on like carrying water, like spine injuries. But it's nice to hear that in Kenya, or at least in your community, people go in groups and it's never something you have to do alone. But I can only imagine how hard it would be to travel so much every day for water. I want to ask, how do you think climate change has impacted water in Kenya? I know recently there has been flooding, and those are exacerbated by climate change. So if you have any insights, thank you.
Thank you, Joey. So one of the things that I'd say, even before the flash floods that happened between March and May, um, Kenya was still facing like high rates of climate change consequences. Because I remember from just statistics that I read, that was last year, at least by May, 5 million people had been impacted by climate change. But even when you take a step back from this big number and you look at the communities, because I've been born in in an arid semi-arid space, but then I've also visited other communities, and the biggest chunk of land in Kenya is arid semi-arid because it's the northern side. And one of the things that say from someone that's very passionate about women and girls empowerment is that um, climate change put women, especially women in these pastoralist communities, at a very at an even higher vulnerable state. They were already vulnerable because moving up and about, there was this other factors that put them in a very vulnerable state. But then climate change kind of multiplied that vulnerability because, for example, if you had to walk, maybe if you had to walk 10 kilometers to get water. Now you have to walk 20 kilometers more to get water. And then, so that means in between you leaving your house, going to fetch water and coming back, anything can happen to you. And you just sometimes, because people are moving and communities are nomadic, so people continuously move. You realize that I visited my community last year, and I was shocked to see that a community that had so many people in it is so deserted. So you can imagine if, for example, a particular village had 50 people, right now it has 25, or it has very few people. These women now have to walk a longer distance. So there are fewer, and so there's no security for them. So there's no security for them as they go to look for water. So that means they're even more vulnerable to issues like violence and other things. So for me, I'd say it puts women in a more vulnerable space. But directly, but also indirectly, because these communities lost a lot of livestock. That is their source of income. They lost livestock. So what happens is that I had 100 goats. Now I have 5. So what I need to do is to find out in my nuclear family, do I have a daughter? Yes, I do have a daughter. Then I'm going to marry her off so that I can be able to replace this livestock. Because indirectly it also affected women, because it also affected girls, because what now this meant is that for us to get more livestock, we need to use like even harder measures to get them. So girls were girls are at more risk because now they have to be married off for communities to kind of get back their animals through dowry. And so now the issue of female genital mutilation increased. The issue of teenage pregnancies increased. I remember when I was checking the data of how that impacted communities, you'd see that like counties like Samburu, counties like in arid, semi-arid communities were the top 10. And so that means that climate change had a direct impact on the lives of women and girls, in their security, in the way of life, in them accessing education, because now education became a secondary need. I think it's even a third, not really a secondary need, but even lower than that, because people are asking, why do I take you to school and we don't have food? So the only important thing right now is, how do we access food? How do we access water? So you're not going to school anymore. So children now are leaving school. So I'd say climate change really impacted a lot of communities, because they had to move from their ancestral homes and to move into other towns where there was at least more like access to water and food. But then when you look at the flash, I'd say now the what happened between March and May, the flash floods, livestock, I'd say even apart from livestock, we were all there was a lot of seasonal change. We rarely get that much rain at that time. We start to get rain around April, and it's not like too much rain, like it's just moderate rainfall. But then what has been happening is that it's like the seasons have flipped. And so we are getting rains when we do not expect, and we don't get rains when we expect rains. So we are in between a lot of rains and extreme heat waves. So there's no middle ground. I've seen there's no middle ground right now in Kenya. So what's happening is that, and so when you look at, especially, for example, right now I'm serving a farming community, and what was happening is that there was a lot of loss in terms of food, because there's only much, of course, there's only much that plants can take in terms of water. So a lot of families and a lot of communities did not harvest well at that particular time, because what was going on is that the flash floods and extreme rains kind of made fruit produces to rot at the farm. So things like potatoes will rot in the farm, and things and other food produces. So when we were all excited, we were like, oh, we are going to now plant this, and everyone was excited. Farmers were excited in terms of how they foresaw like these rains would be, but actually the consequences were worse than what people expected, because now there's no food. Lives were lost, especially for people that lived next to water catchment areas or things like rivers, because in the town that I live right now, Naivasha, there was like huge life losses in the next town. It's the same town, but it's just like the next town. It's called Maimahiu, where a dam broke and it carried almost a whole village. It's just people died, people went missing, people lost around 600,000 people in the country. I don't know in Maimahiu, but around 600,000 people lost their homes. And was it was such a shock because it was not planned for. No one saw it coming. So there was a lot of loss of lives that was seen due to these flash floods, but then also a lot of loss of income and livelihood that were also seen.
That's so powerful to hear about how climate change has exacerbated so many different social issues, from education to global health to all these systems that you discussed. So thank you so much for sharing. This is a very, very powerful story. Thank you so much, Fariah.
Welcome.